Hey, well, good morning, Eleni. Happy New Year to you.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you too.
I always like to think about new beginnings, new hope, new dreams at the beginning of a new year. And I unfortunately have had so many women reaching out to me for help.
Yeah.
And I think the holidays can be hard on a survivor of covert abuse and coercive control. Do you have any thoughts about what it's like to spend a holiday with a covert abuser or a coercive controller? How happy do they make what's supposed to be happy holidays?
Yeah. At least with my experience, it was everything like ramped up, right? And they seemed like really unhappy during that time. Um, it was like, I brought out the Christmas tree and I'm really big into decorating. I love the holidays. Um, First thing that he mentions when he comes home is you left pine needles on the floor, or you left the box out. Not, thanks for decorating. So they always find something to start an argument, I've noticed.
That is so funny with the pine needles because I had a similar experience. I was not allowed to get a Christmas tree until the night before Christmas, and
Mm,
then when I went out and got it myself, my ex said there better not be a single pine needle in that trunk of the car or on the carpet. And
yeah.
after Christmas was over, and I spent hours cleaning as much as I could of the remnants of Christmas. And my ex found a dust ball behind the couch, and I spent the rest of the day ranting about that.
Yeah, and it ramps up, and that's a story I hear a lot is they're very they use cleaning as a control mechanism.
Yeah.
And that's very common with covert abusers and coercive controllers. They will pinpoint everything that is wrong. They're hypercritical. So they will pick out everything wrong. Mine took photos of the pots I didn't clean properly. They're like, you think initially that maybe that they have OCD, but it's not. It's a means of control. It's a way of bringing down your self-esteem and making you walk on eggshells to make sure there's nothing out of place and nothing's going to set them off.
Yeah, it's like turning you into a Stepford wife, like
Yeah.
especially around household duties that are usually think of as belonging in the female realm, like how you cook, how you prepare meals, how you take care of the kids, what you're shopping for, what you're buying, what you're bringing home, how you're cleaning. I yesterday had a lady whose husband gave her a set of rules about how to walk the dog.
Yeah.
Several days before that, I had a lady whose husband had given her a 20-page document on how to properly do the laundry. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like this micromanagement of traditionally female tasks, but that extends even beyond the house. But it
Yeah.
started in a sphere of influence, turning her into this a servant, this
Yeah.
person. It's almost like a form of human trafficking.
Yeah, and it's so hard to pinpoint that that's abuse, right? Because when we think of abuse, I think that's the other thing with coercive control and covert abuse is when we think of abuse, we think of the abuser as this violent, angry man
Yeah.
that's very dysregulated and unhinged. But the coercive controllers and the covert abusers are more calculative and calm, and they talk down to you. And because of that, you don't notice that you're being controlled or abused or manipulated.
Yes, and you don't have bruises or broken bones to show for it. And sometimes they don't even yell at you or they don't swear.
Hmm.
They don't raise their voice.
Exactly. They're usually very calm, and that makes you seem like the crazy one when you're reacting to their
Right.
disrespect.
That's right. There's a psychologist, John Gottman, who wrote a book, I think it was called When Men Batter Women, and he was dividing abusers into two categories, the pit bulls and the cobras. And I think these guys they
Oh,
alternate. Like sometimes a covert abuser can be overt and he can be yelling and throwing things, but other times they can be sort of slow and silent or monotone in the way they're explaining to you every aspect of your being that is not
yes.
working according to plan.
Yes. Yeah, and it chips away at you over time. Or it seems like they have like a list of things in their mind that is wrong with you, and they simply read off the list, and it's very condescending. And you're like, what is happening? But it's hard to pinpoint that you're being abused because the person isn't yelling and they don't seem like an abuser you would see on TV.
Absolutely. It's that what you're saying, that talking down and that sort of lecturing you with that condescending manner. That's that power imbalance that
Yeah.
happens Is you're trying to be accommodating, you have self-reflection, you have the ability to empathize, or maybe he's had a difficult day at work, or maybe he's operating out of some of his childhood wounds, or maybe there's something I could do that would make things better. And then God forbid you should go to couples counseling with
Oh
this
my
level
God.
of empathy and self-reflection, where he's trying to paint a picture of how, he's the long-suffering partner just trying to make sense of his bipolar or borderline partner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because, and I see so many people that get into couples counseling with their covert abuser because for me, at least, I had no idea. I was blaming myself. I didn't know what was going on. So I'm like, well, if we just work this out, or maybe I could work things out, things will change, things will get better. And with a therapist that's not trained in domestic violence, you could really easily get into a diagnosis even of borderline or bipolar. I've had people who have, like, I've talked to people who have gotten diagnosis from a therapist afterwards. Um, and it's insane. And it's so incredibly frustrating that there isn't education, that there are therapists out there that don't have adequate domestic violence training.
Yes, and that's one of my missions going forward. In years gone by, I've been doing this work for the last 13 years, and I work with over 1,400 women. But what I found is it's not enough to just educate individual survivors about what covert abuse and coercive control look like. Because what happens is you take an educated woman and you put them in an uneducated system, and they're being re-victimized by the very systems that are supposed to be serving and protecting them. So that's why I'm going upstream to provide trainings for people like physicians and therapists and attorneys and court staff and law enforcement, so they all start to get the idea that you don't necessarily need broken bones or bruises for somebody to be in a potentially lethal relationship. Coercive control is a lethality risk, even if it doesn't have a prior history of physical violence or forensic evidence. And when you take somebody like that that's in a relationship where their husband has never yelled at them or sworn at them or called them names, but somehow their children are looking at them, giving them the side eye and disrespecting them and not listening to them, and maybe even turning against them and really favoring what dad has to say. Children often move towards whoever they think is the more powerful parent. It's a matter of survival. And so you get somebody like this that's really good at brainwashing and gaslighting and charming. And if they get to the couples counselor first, then they can, without that trauma-informed lens to look at a covert abuser through, they're now looking at his partner like, oh yeah, I see what Johnny's been saying about Susie, because she's coming in a little bit rattled. Why?
Yeah.
What has he done before?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I see it's so frustrating because what we see, especially with law enforcement, what they see and what the therapist sees is usually the abuser is usually very calm. They're calm, they're collected, they're even almost too collected. Um, and the victim is, well, we're dysregulated. We're like, we seem, we're crying, because we've been pushed to a certain point.
Yes.
So that's something to look out for. It's
Oh,
not usually the person that's the person that looks dysregulated is the abuser. It's usually the other way around.
absolutely. Oh, Lenny, that's so right on with that. And too often women get labeled hysterical.
Oh yeah.
And what's not realized is they've been kept up all night. I had one lady whose husband he was a physician, chasing her around the house all night after she told him she wanted a divorce because she was tired of the cheating and she was tired of what was going on in the bedroom. And that's something we should talk about too, what goes on in the bedroom. Let's talk about all kinds of things that we're not supposed to talk about: sex,
Yeah,
money, politics, all of
do
that stuff.
it.
Yeah. So here she is she told her husband, I know you've been cheating. I know California is a community property state and I'm entitled to 50% of whatever we own. And I want a divorce. So many cats she let out of the bag. Not a good idea. And so what does he do? Chases her around the house all night with a knife, flings plates at her. The kitchen's a mess. And then she ends up calling the police. He gets to the police before she does, and says to the police, thank God you're here. I'm in his calm, collected manner, as you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank God you're here. I'm a physician. I do believe my wife is having another one of her psychotic breakdowns. Would you please help me to help her? I think that she needs to be on a 5150, a psychiatric hold for her own safety and frankly for the sake of our children. So the police go in and they see her like, you know, hair all flying and the plates broken and the knife on the counter, and she's not coming across too coherently in the moment. So she gets, you know, she gets slapped in restraints and carted off to the hospital and put in a locked unit. And then he comes to visit her the next day and she says to him, "Why did you do that?" And he says, "Because I can." You know, that, ta-da, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so many ways they manipulate their credentials, their public image, and he's the calm one, she's the out of control, crazy one, and we judge a book by its cover, and that's how covert abusers get away with it.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I think the red flag should also be they're calm and they're charming. Everyone,
Charming, over and over again. Yeah, so right
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, if everyone loves you, why does everyone love you? That means you're not being authentic, right? Like
Yeah.
they're usually so incredibly loved in their community. Um, or everyone's like, oh, they're the nicest guy ever. Like these are the people where they murder their wives and their next door neighbors say, oh, he was the nicest guy I've ever met,
He
you
just
know?
snapped, right?
He just
People don't
snapped. Yeah, he
snap.
just snapped.
Yeah, yeah, here he was, the life of the party. And it's not that we want to be cynical about, oh, if somebody's charming and attractive and successful, well, put that a big X
I
through the.
know.
No, but you want to have your eyes open because of our tendency to judge a book by its cover. And with people like beautiful people like you're beautiful, you're intelligent, I bet you're creative, you're successful in your life. That's wonderful. You are also a target. You're a target of somebody that wants a trophy partner, a trophy wife, or a trophy
Yes.
girlfriend. And
Yep.
what so many women don't realize is that when they end up blaming themselves about is that, oh, is there something wrong with me? Or my therapist says I'm acting out of my childhood wounds, or why do I attract this kind of man? It must be something
Oh
wrong
my
with me.
gosh.
That's victim blaming,
I
right?
get that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a therapist that posted about that and how why we
Ah,
attract abusers. I know. I made a video. I was so upset. I was like, I have to record something. I'm so upset because it's not the childhood wounds. It's that these people are interspecies predators that that are
yes.
truly predatory. They find people that they think they'll boost their image. Um, if they're a nice person that has, people think are good people, it'll make it props up their mask of being a good person because they're associated with you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
also if you're an attractive, like successful, etc. person, that also makes them look better. So it's they select people very specifically. I know mine did. I was on social media posting I got a new job, I had a new apartment, I was really happy with my life, had my little, coffees in the morning, and he found me. And that's how they do it. And I think social media is another thing. It's very easy for people, predators specifically, to assess information on you based off of what you're posting on social media.
Oh, that's so true. And it's so true. It's there's no privacy anymore. And once you've gotten into a relationship like this and you try to get out, it's amazing what kind of revenge they can take on you afterwards through weaponizing social media. Anything in the hands of a covert abuser can become a weapon, even social media, especially social media. And there are a lot of trolls out there that just are happy to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Oh, this, she's being accused of XYZ and somebody else said it's true. So it must be true. And then you keep
Mhm.
repeating that lie over and over again. Well, people start to believe it. We have to start digging beneath the headlines, but this business about what happened to you in your childhood and why are you attracting this kind of person? After working with over 1,400 women, I have a lot of them who have come from homes that have had trouble, where there has been sometimes physical violence, often emotional abuse. But I also have women who've come from very healthy homes and where their parents treated each other with love and respect, and the same with the children, and they still end up with this kind of guy. So I think what makes you vulnerable is, yes, your great qualities, your beauty, your intellect, your financial self-sufficiency, your career, all these things are attractive to a predator. And if you have any childhood wounds, that makes you extra vulnerable. So it's none of us is perfect. We don't emerge from this life unscathed, right? So we're going to have vulnerabilities, and these guys are very good at tapping into them. But it's just looking at one side of the puzzle to say it's because of how you suffered that you're bringing
Yeah.
suffering into your life.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I think in so okay, I don't know if you've read this book. I'm a big fan of I have it right here. I've been reading it. But Dr. Sandra L. Brown, you can't actually
Oh,
post
yes,
this.
yes, 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 yes. Women who love psychopaths. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, she has she made a personality profile of women who have been in relationships with pathological people, dangerous people. And what she found was high levels of like agreeableness,
mhm.
high levels of like conscientiousness, and relationship investment. So we're more likely to be invested in the relationship. We want the relationship to succeed, and we're more like self-reflective. Um, when when we place that with a healthy person, these are great qualities.
Yeah.
When a predator comes by, these are dangerous qualities.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. And I think that this is probably one of the most important conversations we could have to alert, especially young, innocent women who are exploring the dating world and just getting into their first deep relationship, to beware of the wolves in sheep's clothing out there, because it's not enough to just check off the boxes of charming, intelligent, good job, nice car, nice neighborhood, upwardly mobile. Uh, uh, think about what are your qualities and what are your vulnerabilities and what are you looking for in a partner, and what are deal breakers for you in a partner. And if you can be real clear about your values, your character, your lifestyle, even, it can help you find somebody that's a good match. And if you can start to look for early warning signs of controlling behavior, I hope we can talk a lot about that too. That what are the signs to look for? Because it's not like, oh, stop being agreeable. So I want to get another
Yeah, yeah,
stop being agreeable, because that's going to make you a target, and don't be so conscientious because that's going to be a problem. No,
yeah.
keep all your good qualities. One of the things I like to like an analogy I like to use is like the rose. Let's be the rose out in the world, where we save our soft petals and our delicate aroma for the people who are worthy to come close and enjoy our lovely scent. And then let's save our thorns for the people that try to grab us too tight and hold us too close and control us too much. So we
Oh,
can be the rose and the thorns. We don't have to be hard and brazen and I hate the term Karen, because I mean, poor Karens. People, I know lots of lovely Karens, but we
right.
don't have to be somebody that is, brittle and obnoxious to be safe in the world. We can,
Hmm.
but we can reserve our delicate softness, our conscientiousness, our agreeability for those who are worthy. And if we can learn early warning signs of controlling behavior, we'll be able and set clear boundaries. We'll be able to sort of toggle the switch that turns on our petals or our thorns.
Yep, agreed. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Warning
think
signs.
the
Warning
early
signs.
warning signs. I think focusing on, for me at least, focusing on how you feel in this relationship.
Yeah.
I was blessed to have had a pretty long term, pretty healthy relationship before that, for this one. So I realized something was off because it didn't feel like the other one. But feelings like, do you feel small after leaving a conversation with them?
Oh,
Yeah, that was the first like aha moment when I was talking to my therapist. I'm like, when I leave conversations, he's not yelling at me, but he makes me feel small. So I wasn't sure what that was, but that's an indicator of a power imbalance happening.
hmm.
And all forms of abuse are rooted in power and control. So that is a person trying to dominate another person in a conversation so that you feel small. So I think that's a huge initial red flag.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of that dominating conversation just between the two of you, did you notice any difference when you were out in public, like at a party or at a gathering, where you tried to make a comment or tell a story or something? Did you ever find him talking over you there?
No, he was, yeah, in public, everyone said he came off very shy. Um, and, I had friends that are like, oh, he comes off pretty shy. So it was a different persona from when he was at home.
That's interesting. And I think maybe it's important for us to say that the things we're talking about, it's not like one size fits all. Uh,
Hmm.
and for anybody that's listening, take what resonates with you and pull out what makes sense. Because I have had other ladies who, when they were out with their partner and they would meet somebody new, he would take over the conversation. And each time she would start to initiate a comment or tell a story, he would jump in and interrupt or make fun. And
Oh, wow.
there's another red flag. How does somebody treat humor? And does humor become
Yeah.
a weapon?
Yeah.
Because humor is another
Yes.
way to sort of strengthen that power imbalance.
Hmm.
It's not just I'm laughing with you, but I'm
I'm
laughing at
laughing at
you,
you.
and I'm
Yeah.
getting other people to laugh at you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Any comment that they make and then they rebuttal with, "Oh, I was just joking."
Oh, yeah, you're too sensitive.
You're
Can't you
too
take a joke?
sensitive. Yeah, absolutely.
I have to walk on
Um,
eggshells around you. Oh man, are you gaslighting me?
yeah, but I think they're more sophisticated now. At least mine is quite sophisticated. He was in therapy. So sophisticated. So he was also claimed to be a feminist. He went to a women's rally with me. So they don't say oh, my ex is crazy. They don't say, oh, you're too sensitive. He said things like, oh, you just wear makeup for the patriarchy and to appease men. And it was using that weaponizing therapy language, weaponizing progressive language to undermine me, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll they'll make a joke. They'll say something is, about you and oh, whatever. And then they'll just say, oh, it's just a joke. Or they'll say, oh, you're just being too sensitive. Or they're saying you're doing this because of it's not, it's more, it's less it's less, they don't say just, oh, I was just joking
on,
anymore.
on the nose. Well, I think sometimes, well, I guess it depends on the generation you're in, because I work
Yeah.
with women of many different generations. But let's not rule it out, because I've heard that comment. You're too sensitive. Can't you take
Yeah.
a joke? I have to watch, walk on eggshells around you. So
Oh my
I
gosh.
think covert abuse is a spectrum too, and just like coercive control is a spectrum. Like, and it just, brief definition of coercive control for anybody that's new to it. It's a pattern of threatening, isolating, controlling behavior. And really, the intent is to rob you of your freedom and over time your identity. It's the ultimate form of identity theft. So, and it is a lethality risk, and it's right up there with ending the relationship and gun ownership. So it can range from that sort of you're wearing makeup for the patriarchy to strangulation and everything in between. So and it may not even be a generational thing. It's just where do they fall on the spectrum of subtlety?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the thing. They can be incredibly subtle or sometimes not.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Yeah.
think they're getting more sophisticated. Unfortunately, I think,
Well, yeah, because they're getting together, right?
yeah.
In back rooms, you pulled out that book. There's another book, and I hate to say the title, but the title of it is "Screw the Bitch," and, and it's got a
Wow.
picture of this woman that looks like a zombie on the front cover, and it's basically about uh, how to stick it to your ex-girlfriend, wife, because if you don't get her, she's going to get you. It's a jungle out there, and it's that sort of primitive, very sort of low functioning mentality. Yes, subtlety on the one hand, but this sort of primitive urge to destroy, which is
Yeah.
very primitive and primordial on the other.
Yeah, absolutely. They something they all have in common is the urge to destroy and dominate. I think,
Yeah, yes, and to conquer, to sow seeds of dissent, and to cause pain and suffering to the people they should be protecting the most. And that's what can give women a hard time wrapping their minds around. You're good, you're kind.
yeah,
It's so hard for you to think that somebody could be capable of something that's
yeah,
so cruel, so
hmm,
cutting, and so destructive. But they do
yes,
walk amongst us, and while masquerading as these regular, fun-loving, charming
yeah,
people.
yeah. It's The true evil, I don't think, walks around with horns on their heads, is what I've been saying.
Well, yeah, like Lucifer was God's bright, shiny angel, right? Lucifer was God's right-hand man. Till, like, he got a little too full of himself. It was about pride, right? And wanting to become God himself, and then got kicked out of heaven. And I think that these guys walking amongst us, and there can be some women that get into this whole power and control trip as well. But we're talking about the power imbalance between men and women. And I think in our conversation, that's our area of expertise here. But with just like with Lucifer, with the bright shiny, he was the most beautiful angel in all of heaven. The equivalent on this planet now are the doctors, lawyers, engineers, celebrities that walk on this planet, looking good, sounding good, and all the better to hide what's going on inside.
Yeah, yeah, I think that could be more terrifying. I think a lot of people have a harder and more difficult time believing victims when they see the abuser, because we, to feel safe in our society, want to feel like it's easy to just pick out an abusive man, an angry man.
Yeah, that's why we want to think that, oh, the pedophile is the yucky old guy in the trench coat hiding in the bushes waiting to pounce on a kid at the playground. It's not Uncle Fred or your dad or your mom. Sometimes it's like that is, oh, my mind can't go there. So
Yeah.
but it can't be Dr. So-and-so or this wonderful professor, this wonderful healer, this faith leader,
Yeah.
this pillar of the community. Can't possibly believe that. Tilt, because the mind can't, that cognitive dissonance, right? That
Yes.
kicks in, can't hold these two opposing images or ideas at the same time. Like 1984, George Orwell, wrote a whole book about that, The Ministry of Peace, all about
Mhm.
war, doublethink. And that's what drives women crazy in this kind of relationship too, because I love him, but I'm feeling like dismissed, or he talks to me in such a condescending way, but he bought me this. Oh, but he was rude to that server. Oh, but this, but tilt. He
Yeah.
didn't hit me. He's nice. Often he's nice. He's charming.
Mhm.
But why am I dying inside?
Mhm. Yeah, it's that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Absolutely. Yeah, yes, one of my favorite analogies. Yeah, that book was so ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Phantom of the Opera, or gosh, I don't know, a darker version of Twilight. Uh, that like I think that energy vampire analogy holds as well, because so many of the women that I work with, they feel like they just become a shell of their former self. They say, I used to be smart, I used to have a memory, I used to be confident, I used to be happy. Where did it all go? It was sucked out of them by that spiritual vampire they were living with.
Yeah. And over time, it chips away at you. You don't even realize it. Because what happens in these relationships is we're looking for one big event that is obviously abuse. And if
Yeah,
we feel justified, if it's obviously abuse, I could leave.
yeah.
But what usually happens
Or
is, yeah, what usually happens is the chipping away at you, the death by a thousand paper cuts over time. And of course, if you're being, ridiculed or criticized every day, or spoken down to every day, over time your self-esteem is going to diminish. It's inevitable.
yeah,
And
it's one
and
of
it happens without you even realizing it.
the whole frog in the water. You put whoever would put a frog on a pot on a stove. Well, that's another story, but turning it up degree by degree. But uh um I had I have a lady, and I want to dedicate all my presentations and trainings going forward, my work going forward, to, I'm going to call her Ruby. But Ruby was in a marriage for 30 years, and her husband never raised his voice. He never swore at her, never yelled, never called her names. But they had a daughter, and he worked over many years to turn that daughter against her, and he did it quietly and subtly, and he knew exactly all the buttons to push on his with his wife, and he would ramp her up, and then she would get angry, she would throw things, or she would reach out and grab him, and that's what would get filmed on the home
Yes.
camera and
Hmm.
played back to the daughter, and or the daughter would walk into a scene after he had set his wife up, and then mom would be kind of cold or distant or just not just responding in the monosyllables, and the daughter would begin to think mom is cold, mom is distant, mom does lose her temper, and look at dad who never throws things like mom does, or yells or gets angry or cries or seems so hysterical. And she didn't have any words to put on it, what was happening to her over time. Oh, hi, Kitty. Kitty, I think Kitty is aware that there's an intense conversation going on, and really kitties are so sensitive. So over time, she started to feel like there was something wrong with her, that because her extended family members even were looking at it, giving her the side eye because he was so charming and so nice to them. And she was a Christian, and her pastor was telling her to forgive her husband, to try again, forgive 70 times 7 times. And the reason why I'm devoting my work going forward, well, the last thing I want to say is, even when they went to couples counseling, they talked about why she was so cold in the bedroom. And she was not allowed to talk about why she was so cold in the bedroom, but you can imagine why. And we're going to have another conversation about what the things that are done to women in the bedroom in the dark, that they may not feel qualify as abuse, but are controlling and damaging to the soul over time. But this beautiful soul, who I will call Ruby, passed away in December of a stage 4 illness, with no history of that illness in her family history. And she is not just living proof, but dying proof that a broken heart can kill you. And that is the long, slow murder committed by the covert abuser.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us, we need to have more education also around what happens to someone's health when they're in these relationships or they've experienced these relationships, especially for, for women, but huge hormonal imbalances have been shown to happen. We have thyroid problems that happen. We have heart problems because of the elevated stress in our environment.
Yes. I can't remember the Japanese word for it, but it's broken heart syndrome. It's a thing. When you get this lot of cortisol, that attacking your heart, it can do damage. And people started talking about the ACE studies a while ago, adverse childhood experiences. This was a study that was done many years ago by Kaiser, and people are talking about it now, the things that happen in childhood that can have an impact on you when you grow up, where it started off as a morbid obesity study, and they couldn't really figure out why, when with all these people, and there were I think a large percentage of them were middle-aged white people, while from regular backgrounds, middle to upper income backgrounds. Why were they losing weight only to gain it back and gain even more than they lost before? And as they started to dig into their childhood, they found that there was a history of things like domestic violence, and which would lead to not just organic issues with heart trouble or cancer, because doctors ask you, have you been under a tremendous stress in the last couple of years, but things like coping mechanisms, like maybe having too much alcohol or starting to smoke or getting into sex a little early and not being discriminating about your sexual companions because you're looking for love in all the wrong places. All these, and having work issues and anxiety and depression, and increasing the risk of becoming a victim or a perpetrator of domestic violence yourself when you grow up. But even when you grow up, if you get into this type of relationship, exactly what you're talking about can still happen. So we need not just an adverse childhood experiences study, but an adverse adult experiences study of living with a covert abuser and how it eats away, not just at your self-esteem, but your physical and mental health. Because we get kids, it happens with kids too, getting diagnosed with ADHD in school when maybe they're just thinking about the crap that's going on at home. Women can get diagnosed with ADD and ADHD and anxiety and depression, and they can develop, a drinking problem or prescription medication problem, and they can have accidents because they're not paying attention to the road. Many of my ladies have had a car accident on the way home from court. Is that, you develop this tunnel focus with your partner trying to control your every waking move, even after the relationship ends.
And they do. I think post-separation abuse is when things become more dangerous for people leaving these relationships. And in every instance of the covert abuser, there's some form of financial abuse, there's some form of post-separation abuse, something that they will do because they've lost control of you. And this is how they try to stick it to you at the end.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. It's like like, I don't know. It's like we don't even have to use words. We can just sort of telepathically project what we're thinking to each other. Like I love our conversation. I love how we're on the same wavelength, and how comforting and disturbing it is to know how similar these guys are. It's like they're cookie cutter cut of one another. And
Yep. I
yeah,
get comments every day. Every day. I just had one this morning that was like, I just watched your video. That's exactly what I experienced.
yeah.
And it's like I'm watching, I'm listening to my experience through your experience. And it's because covert abusers all behave very similarly. And we could see each other's experience. We've all experienced very similar things.
Yeah, yeah, and I I'll say too that the women that get involved with this type of covert abuser have a lot in common as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say they're cookie cutter cutouts, but they have so much in common because they are beautiful souls, because they're attractive and successful and kind and capable of self-reflection and honest and hardworking and conscientious and amenable, like agreeable, all these good qualities. That's what they all have in common with these becoming targets of this type of guy. But what you were talking about with that losing control and then having that post-separation abuse happen afterwards to kind of get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's such an important point, because over 70% of domestic violence incidents happen after the relationship ends, including homicide is at higher risk after the relationship ends. And why? Because exactly what you said. These guys say, you think the relationship is over? I'll tell you when it's over. I get to decide. And if I can't have you, nobody else is going to have you either.
Yep. And that's when they try to break you down more. And that's when the abuse ramps up. It becomes more evident that it's abuse. The mask is off. They don't need to pretend anymore.
And you will be punished for that,
And
for
you'll be punished for
unmasking
it.
them.
Absolutely. For unmasking them. Yeah. Because then you're a mirror. You're reflecting back to them who they really are. And they
Oh,
hate you
God
for it.
forbid. Yeah, that will crush
Mhm.
them. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Any accountability? Nope. They can't handle that. No, they can't handle that. And that's when they flip everything around. They flip it on you. They say
True.
everything is your fault. They say this is everything wrong with you, and this is why I don't like you, and this is why, you're not good enough for me. Um,
Yeah, and
and
often
then
accuse you of the very things they've been doing.
yeah. Oh
And it's
yeah,
such a
absolutely.
common tactic in court.
Oh,
They
you're
call,
selfish. Oh, you lack empathy.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're abusive. You're emotionally abusive. You're gaslighting me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's
You're
it's
financially abusive while he's been, siphoning money off and into the Cayman Islands and taking out a credit card in your name and ruining your credit score. Uh,
yes. Yeah. The financial abuse at the end, if you are unfortunate enough to share property with this person, um, marry, have to split finances with them, um, they I don't understand their mental state, but in every instance, it's okay. Every instance I know and myself left with debt. We
yeah,
left with like almost foreclosing on houses because they stopped paying the mortgage. Just these things that they'll do to try and get back at you.
that's so true. Yeah, and it's like again, it's I think a difference in mindset between women like us and men like them. And I hate to sound like, oh, I put people in categories, but I'm going to do it. If we have the idea that there's plenty of love to go around, plenty of attention to go around, including if you have a child, there's plenty of love for that child. That's not how these guys think. If you have a child, that's attention being taken away from what
Yes.
should be directed towards him 24/7.
Mhm.
So the child becomes like this intruder. So like he will either dismiss the child, or be abusive or neglectful towards the
Yes.
child, or recruit the child, and so that becomes an ally with him to turn against mom, because it's almost like life as a war game. You're either with
Yes.
you have to choose sides, and then when you get into the court system, it's all about life as a zero-sum game. There's not enough love, there's not enough money, there's not enough attention to go around, so it's all got to go to him. And if you get a win in court, that must mean he lost. And
Yeah.
the idea of a settlement, a fair settlement, is for him to get everything and for you to have nothing. And I
Hmm.
think the court doesn't understand. They want everybody to get along for the sake of the family, and
Yeah.
maybe try reunification therapy, or
Oh
more
my
couples
God.
counseling. Oh yeah, maybe he strangled you, but that was 6 months ago. Or you got cancer as a result of all the stress you've been through over these last 15 years. Well, now it's time to make amends and reunify for the sake of the children. Can't you two, people get
Get
along?
along.
High
I
conflict.
high conflict. Yeah. That's such
Oh,
a triggering word for me. It's not a high conflict divorce. It's there's an abusive party and then there's an amicable party that wants to get along and go along.
a high attack divorce.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely it is. And usually the abuser is the one with the more resources, typically.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. And how is it that like she may even come to court unrepresented and he's got
Hmm.
an attorney, or they may even hire have a minors counsel to represent the child's interests. But
Hmm.
meanwhile, like over time, he may end up even firing his own attorney, because why have two attorneys working for you? Because he's been paying the minors counsel or working on the minors counsel to turn the minors counsel against mom. So she goes into court and she's being treated like she's part of the problem here, when really he's using that financial abuse and the legal abuse to deplete her financial and emotional resources, and to go after their child. Even if he was neglectful towards the child before, all of a sudden, I can't bear to be without Billy or
Yeah.
Susie. And
Yeah.
then dad's house is like Disneyland, right? And mom's house, she's the mean mom that makes the kids do the homework and uh,
Yeah.
uh, before watching TV, or have a proper breakfast instead of Cheetos.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think we need just more education within the court system. Um, how to spot somebody manipulating the court system, how to spot who has more power in this situation. I think that's a big one too. Who has more power in this situation? Because what can happen is a victim fighting back and fighting for their rights, and they could be then placed as, oh, they're the abuser.
And just, yeah.
Um, but if you look at it through a lens of power and control, who has more power and dominance and resources in this scenario, and who's just trying to defend their rights?
Yes. Oh, wow. It's almost like we need to sort of raise the awareness of even police, when they go to a scene, they're taught to identify the dominant aggressor. Uh,
Hmm.
but on some level, can they be given some kind of X-ray lens and additional training in covert abuse and coercive control, so they can identify the dominant aggressor based on the power imbalance, not the fact that somebody's got wounds? With one of my survivors, after she ended the relationship with her husband, she was tired of being strangled in the bedroom. When she said, "It's over, I'm out of here," again, he put his hands to her throat. She defended herself,
Hmm.
it up with scratch marks. He
Hmm.
called the police and got
Yep.
her arrested and got a restraining order against her, and it's still haunting her with
Oh my
that
God.
restraining order. So that's what happens when you try to take your power back. Even that, like her being in her own power, trying to defend herself and getting away, she's labeled the dominant aggressor with the, thrown in jail with a restraining order.
Yeah, I mean, we even have, and I was looking into this I think last week, the assessment tools that we have to that people give victims to identify if they're a victim of domestic violence are so incredibly vague. They have yes or no questions. Have you, has the person ever laid hands on you? Have they ever yelled at you? Yes or no? And it's not then going into, oh, is this a coercive controlling or power dynamic? It's just the actions. And what typically happens is the person that's probably experiencing reactive abuse, which I hate that term, but reactive abuse is defending themselves.
Yeah, resistance.
And what could happen then is the abuser sees that questionnaire. Oh, I'm the victim in this scenario.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
there's because they're so vague. And these are the assessment tools that we give victims of domestic violence.
But yes, that's such an important point, Eleni. And I think with traditional domestic violence agencies, they are looking for physical and sexual violence, primarily physical violence, because as one attorney said, rape is hard to prove without a witness. Ah! Okay, so should I take a moment so we can both throw up?
Yeah, it was so,
But
Jesus
the
Christ.
problem with that danger assessment is it does go for the on the nose, in your
Mhm,
face. Has he threatened to kill you? Has he strangled you? Does he harm the children?
mhm.
But there is one question on it that talks about, does he try to control your daily activities? That's sort of, that's getting in the direction of coercive control. But there's and it is an important tool, and it can be helpful because often covert abusers will also do physically threatening and dangerous things. For example, turning the car into a weapon. And I like to sort of tweak the danger assessment, and I wouldn't use it for legal purposes. I don't get into the legal realm, but for purposes of safety planning, I adapt those questions to, like, has he ever turned something into a lethal weapon, including a car? So it's not just a gun to the head saying I'm going to kill you. It's a driving home from a party, and maybe you were talking to somebody for a little bit too long, and you, an argument ensues. An argument even implies that it's two-sided. Really, you're being attacked and verbally attacked in the car, and you notice a foot. Maybe he doesn't even say anything, but the foot is going, heavier and heavier on the accelerator. And you ask him, "Could he please slow down?" He stops in the middle of the highway. You want to slow down? Okay. And then you've learned, you've got the message there that you better be careful what you say whenever you're in the car. But a much better tool that I find for getting at the more covert forms of abuse and coercive control is something called the Webb assessment. It's women's experience of battering. And I was on a panel with Evan Stark a while back. He wrote the book, literally wrote the book on coercive control, called Coercive Control, How Men Entrap Women in Personal Life. And when I asked him after our sessions were over what he thought of the Webb scale, he said he likes it. He's a big fan of the Webb scale for getting at these more subtle forms of abuse. And they're not yes or no questions. It's a range, a scale of 1 to 6, where strongly disagree or strongly agree. And it's things like, it works from the inside out. The danger assessment works from the outside in. What do
Yes,
you see?
yeah.
What do you hear?
What
What
are
do you
the
feel? Right?
obvious forms? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But the Webb scale is he makes me unsafe. He makes me feel unsafe, or I try not to rock the boat because I'm afraid of how he might react. Or he has a look that goes right through me and scares me. Like it's like, what is your feeling? And then what I do after they answer a question like that, I try not to rock a boat because I'm afraid of what he might do. Then I might ask, was there ever a time when you did rock the boat, and what did he do in response? And that's when they might tell me the story about what happened on the way home from the party, or like he sped up and he went 100 miles an hour when I asked him to slow down. So
Yeah.
I learned to be silent in the car when it came to talking about driving, or having, any kind of objection to what he was doing. So that's a better tool, but it's not in the hands of many. There are some domestic violence agencies that are starting to use it now, and that is wonderful. We have some even in our own county that are using it, and that's great. But across the country, it should be in the hands of every domestic violence advocate and every attorney and every police officer.
Yes, agreed. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's the system that needs education, I think. I think the victims, we're over here educating. We're over here learning because we went through it. We're like, what did I just go through? What is this? And we're the ones with that usually have the information, or we're seeking it out in some way. What we
Yeah.
need is to put it in front of the people who are not seeking it out, like the lawyers and the attorneys and the judges and the police officers and the whoever else, so that they can recognize uh, forms of coercive control and psychological abuse and covert abuse.
Yes, and even if you're a physician, even if you're a psychologist, even
Yes,
if you're a judge and have tons of letters after your name, that doesn't mean that you're automatically an expert on everything, including covert abuse and coercive control.
I've learned that absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, but it's a question of would they be open to
Yeah.
acknowledging that that
Yeah.
there's learn, and that's it's can be sometimes hard to find providers that are open to admitting that they don't know it all when it comes to this
Mhm.
use. Um, I'm thinking, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about safety, and I first want to express concern that I've talked a little bit about my experience. You've talked a little bit about your experience. I have been, my life has been physically threatened in the past, and I continues to be at risk. And that is a reason why I have to do my talks virtually and be careful about disclosing my whereabouts at any given time. Because as I think you can agree, these guys have long memories. They nurse grievances. And what fuels their fire is the lust for revenge and to reassert that control, and however that looks. So have you thought about the consequences of speaking out in your beautiful, articulate way, but talking about your own personal experiences? And are you worried at all?
Yes. Yeah, I'm terrified, but specifically more terrified of legal ramifications. Because he's a public figure in the public eye, more likely than not, what they do is they go to courthouses and they give you a cease and desist, or try to put some kind of order on you to stop talking about what you're talking about, and then you are faced fighting people in court. Um, so that's mostly where my fear is. I'm and because of that, though, because of that, I feel like I'm more safe to talk about what I'm talking about, because he's a public figure and he's less likely to want to ruin his public image of if he was to do something aggressive, physical, etc. Um, and so that's why I'm speaking out, because I have the opportunity to be a little bit more safe than maybe most people are.
So is there ever a possibility that somebody might be hired to mount some kind of smear campaign against you? As it's not uncommon in this realm.
By smear campaign, if they were to tarnish my reputation, um, no, I'm not I'm not afraid of that. And if the other thing is, like, I have so many people in my life that I love and that love me and that know me genuinely, and they know I'm a kind person. I don't think the smear campaign is going to go very far,
I
you know?
love that. I love that. And I think and I think I draw strength from that as well, because I am surrounded by really good people that use their
Hmm.
power for good. And the people that know me, the people that matter, they believe
Hmm.
me, they believe in me, they believe in my work. That's what matters. But I have to say it still hurts. The attacks still hurt. Um, but I think, recover from them more quickly. And I think part of it is too because of my faith. I'm a
Yeah.
believer, kind of a weird believer. I believe in God and Jesus, but also fairies because I'm Irish. But I do believe that there are good angels watching over me, and I feel like this is God's work, and I feel like you're doing God's work, and it's about putting our own maybe insecurities or fears, like acknowledging them and responding to them as best we can, but not letting them cripple us, paralyze,
Yes.
prevent us from doing the work that needs to be done. And for me, like Judith Herman wrote this book, Trauma and Recovery, and she said one of the best ways to recover from abuse or from trauma is to find meaning in it in a way that helps others. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what you're doing here is getting the word out so that maybe other women can get out sooner than we did
Yep.
and they won't suffer the way we did
Yep. And
and our
it's
children did.
social media is, I think, such a powerful platform for survivors right now, something that we
Yes.
didn't have before, to spread information. Um, and the feedback that I get every day are like, I'm leaving my abusive situation. I've been in it for 10 years. I had no idea what was happening, but I think you just put the nail on the head. This is what's been going on. And that alone, I'm like, yeah, I don't care if I'm sued. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Bless your heart. Yeah, and I get very similar stories myself. The kind words that survivors share, like saying things like, "You didn't just save me, you saved my children." And then she holds up a picture of her children. You let me recognize what was going on and what to do about it. And that's just filled with that kind of gratitude. And I wish there could be like just sort of the end to this kind of chapter in a woman's life, and she closes the door and she can move on. But I think there will always be like the shadow in the background. And I'm glad to hear that you're feeling, reasonably safe going forward. But I think it's really important for women after they leave this type of relationship, because you've signaled to your ex that he's no longer in control. And I've done the same thing. Safety planning will always be a factor for the rest of our lives. It should be. And that could start with things like, oh, you're having a conversation with somebody out in a street corner downtown, and then you notice somebody pulling up in a car across the street. Are you so totally involved in the conversation you don't even see that this is a car that maybe has pulled up in the parking lot when you've been shopping, or pulled at the library when you've gone to get do some work there. Here's this like orange car that's pulled up across the street, and now you're still talking, but then this person is sitting there for a while looking at you. Did you notice that? Then did you notice in the course of your conversation that he was getting out of the car and on the other side of the street, but heading towards this side of the street now, getting closer? If you're still so wrapped up in your conversation, you've gone from, this sort of white, oblivious involvement in your conversation, but oblivious to your surroundings, to sort of the amber alert. Here's like possibly danger, danger. You want to pay attention to your gut instinct too, right? Because that's something that suffers in the course of an abusive relationship, listening to your gut instinct. But if you wait too long, then, you may end up with, you're already, it's the rules of engagement here are applying, and he's serving you with a document, or snapping a picture of you, or doing something to intimidate you, or possibly something worse. So that's why awareness is one of the key factors. But any thoughts about paying attention to your gut in the course of
Oh my God. I think that's what saved me. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, I think, like I said, like that feeling of being small, really listening to your intuition. I wrote about that also in like my book, but it was a whole chapter about feeling your intuition is so incredibly important, because what can happen is we're not spotting manipulation, of course, because that's if we were able to spot it, it wouldn't work.
overt abuse?
Especially, yeah. Um, so understanding when you feel anxious around this person, that's the walking on eggshells feeling. Do you feel smaller around this person? Like how are you feeling in this relationship? These are all like key terms to help you distinguish if the relationship is abusive, because it doesn't, if you're not educated, and most people aren't, on covert abuse, you won't be able to pinpoint that. So your feelings, that intuition, that's what you need to listen to.
That's so beautiful and so well said. And that in the early stages of this type of relationship, we see how it happens. We can start to see like the man behind the curtain, that
Yeah.
charm, that love bombing, that's all the phase one of gaslighting, right? So you're getting swept off your feet. Oh, it's like he's texting me, a million times a day, just checking in. I'm missing you. How are you doing? What are you up to? Yeah,
Yeah.
that looks like love in the beginning, but maybe over time it starts to look like stalking. But so he's saying all these lovely things and maybe buying you gifts and these grand public gestures of affection, whatever, and taking you places. It's all good, and you're feeling those love hormones popping. But there may be every now and again he may say something or do something like making you
Yes.
feel diminished, or uh, but there's all this other, the smoke and mirrors that's going on, that you're
Yep.
falling in love. And that's over time, you'd start to see that the purpose of the charm and charisma and the love bombing in this case, not in the case of a good guy that's charming and charismatic, but in this case, the purpose is to drown out your inner voice so that you don't pay attention to the things that are sort of going, whoop, tilt, that didn't make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drowning out that inner voice, so that over time, when he starts to chipping away at you, you've lost that ability to go, ooh, that didn't feel right. That didn't feel good, because his voice is
Yeah.
so much stronger than yours.
Oh my gosh, so true. Can we talk about the love bombing for a second? How that's
Yeah.
manipulation? Like
Woo-hoo! All
that's
for it. Yeah, let's
that's
go.
part of the coercive control. That's part of the manipulation. Because what happens when you've been love bombed is when the disrespect starts to happen, the controlling behavior starts to happen, you think to yourself, oh, they must be just having a bad day. They're just, this is not who they are. They're having a bad day. They're going through a rough part in their life. They're whatever. And your mind is more likely to remember the positive moments and then diminish those negative moments to keep you safe, that euphoric recall. And that's what happens when you've been love bombed. You think, okay, well, this is just a one-off event, or this is another one-off event. It just happens. Everyone gets angry every so often. It's part of the manipulation, so you stay in that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so well said. One of the analogies I use is like astronomy. So you go out into the night sky and then you see the collection of stars if you don't know anything about astronomy. But then you start to learn, oh, those stars, that collection right there, that's the Big Dipper. You know, so like, oh yeah, he cut somebody off in traffic, or he made this comment that hurt my feelings, or I'm starting to wonder if my technology is has been hacked. And after he so kindly offered to install some new software for me, one off, one off, one off. But then once, if you start to keep a journal and start to try to resurrect that little tiny voice, it becomes a whisper over
Yeah.
time. But if you can start to tune into it again, then those dots you can connect the dots and start to read between the lines and intuit the innuendo, because it's context, it's subtlety, it's nuance. And in our culture, we're all about, like, you know, headlines and flashing lights, and what you see is what you get. But when you get into this love bombing stage, if we remember that these guys are all about the zero-sum game. He's giving, giving, giving. There's going to be payback, baby. He's going to want whatever he gave you. He
Yeah.
wants it
Oh,
back.
yeah. They
And
see relationships as transactional. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And he's going to grow taller by making you smaller.
Hmm.
That's that zero-sum game that makes you feel diminished over time and stop listening to your inner voice. That is the effect of love bombing. It explodes all the little pieces in your head that are the warning signs telling you to think twice before moving forward. Because don't we all want to be in love? Don't we all
Yeah.
want to be Prince Charming? Are people talking about you younger folks are talking about and well, I just want to make a comment though about before I talk about fairy tales. I love the fact that you are this sweet, beautiful, strong woman warrior, young woman. And here I am, you know, I'm at the other end of the spectrum here, age-wise, but the same applies in my support group. I have women in their 20s and women in their 70s and everything in between. So,
Mhm.
but we're all sisters, and that's what I
Yeah.
love. And women from different races, different cultures, religious backgrounds. I mean, it's amazing, all coming together as sisters because of this common experience. So I love the fact that we're having this conversation, and I hope that we can have many more, because what it's about is the ripple effect, the butterfly effect, right? Here we are, two little butterflies, and we're flying. We're just talking, like telling it like it is, and
Yeah.
and people will tune in and they'll go, yeah, that
Yeah.
resonates, and they'll tell a friend, they'll tell a friend, and before
Yes.
you know it, across the globe, women will be rising up and
I
saying,
love this.
yeah,
I love this.
yeah,
That's why
yeah.
I'm like, social media right now is so powerful, because it's not even just us talking about covert abuse. It's also women speaking out about disrespect or behavior that they don't appreciate, or weaponized incompetence when it comes to men, and the load in the the home, and the workload. Um, we have so many shared experiences that we're starting to be like, oh, aha, aha. It's like the Barbie movie where we're all getting, oh my gosh, you can't see this. The Barbie movie, we're all getting a little bit deprogrammed. And I love that. I love this so much, that we're all finding community and talking with each other and finding common experiences and learning so quickly before we didn't have this connection.
I love that too. So I guess what we're entering now in is this new phase of taking back the things that have been weaponized against us. Our power, our ability to do self-reflection and talk about our feelings and speak openly, and our money, our status in the world, our careers, our joy, our happiness, our creativity. And in our conversations, we'll talk about the crap, but I hope that we also talk about how beautiful and rich life can be after this type of relationship, because you know, it was Nietzsche who said, you have to be careful when you're fighting monsters that you don't become a monster yourself. When you stare into the abyss looks back. And so
Mhm.
we don't want to become the thing that we fled from. the thing that we fear, the thing that some of us hate. That and I have to say, I don't hate my former, anybody that was abusive to me in my life. I don't hate them. In fact, I had deep love for them at one time. So I don't wish them ill. I wish them peace, and I wish they would leave me alone. But I have not, my heart has not grown hard as a result of my experiences. And I think I've developed more, and I think you have too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you also have developed more kindness and empathy. These are your superpowers now, to understand and sympathize with the suffering of others, to have compassion for that because of what you've been through and overcome yourself. And what a role model you are for young people, and me for the oldies, and hopefully everybody in between, that we can say life is not over when you leave an abuser. Life is just beginning.
Yes, so true. And it feels like that at first. It does feel like
Yes, it is.
your
Yeah, it
life
is
is
a kind of
crumbling.
death.
It
Yes.
really does. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the trauma bond where you feel like your life is crumbling around you afterwards.
Yeah.
And they make you feel, so incredibly worthless at the end. That's their goal. Um, but after, I promise you'll get to a point where you're not waking up thinking about them anymore. That you're thriving, you're living a wonderful life. And another part is connecting with those people that have been in similar experiences, because we've all had similar experiences and we kept connect with each other and we find support with each other. And I found like the closest friends I've ever had just with these
Uh,
experiences.
And don't you find that the more you talk about your story, the more you meet other women that have experienced exactly what you've been through, and they go,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's what happened to
Yeah.
me. Oh, now I got language to
Yeah.
put it. Ooh."
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, even on, and like, my stuff is on TikTok, but the other educators on TikTok getting together, we all talk. I'm like, oh my God, you just made a video that I was planning to make, but you said it better, and we had the same experience, and we're all like, it's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it's disturbing how common this problem is in our
Yeah.
world. That we like to think it's at the far end of the spectrum, and
It's
most people
not.
are good, and that's why we give them the benefit of the doubt. But
Yeah.
going forward, have people earn our trust.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the other thing. I think the other thing that Dr. Sandra L. Brown said was like high trust or something like that. That was another part of things that we have, but it's the trusting, and trusting is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to trust people, but trusting without discernment can be incredibly dangerous.
yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we want to have our safari guides open as we're walking through the jungle of life, or going swimming in the deep ocean, so we can tell the dolphins from the sharks, right? Let's not touch
Yeah. And sometimes the sharks look like dolphins.
Purdue. Um, yeah, and what you said about this feeling of like I don't know, the chaos or the trauma after leaving a relationship, feeling like it's a kind of death and dissolving. Like I talked about the butterfly effect. Maybe we are all butterflies, and if we think about like the caterpillars, walking along with their 100 legs, and they're like these frilly little creatures, but they're earthbound, and then there's inside this chrysalis, or they're stuck in this little cocoon-like state. But then, while they're in that state, they dissolve. I mean, that blows my mind that these little, larvae dissolve into liquid. They have to dissolve into chaos before they can reform and emerge as these magnificent butterflies that can fly, these creatures that can uh, really travel thousands, eventually many miles. So what an amazing thing that is, to go from something that's earthbound, then to dissolve into chaos, and then to put the pieces back together in a form that's even more beautiful than what it was before, with new powers, new superpowers. We can fly free. And that's why my logo is the bird
Oh,
flying out of the gilded cage.
I love that.
Yeah, wow. Do you think, shall we call it a wrap for today, and then hopefully promise to meet again, talk
Yeah.
about life's problems next time too?
Yeah, yeah, we have so much to talk about. I think we also had the pyramid of the abuser mentality. We have so much to go through, and I would love to go through
Oh,
that next time.
oh my gosh. Oh, I'm dying to hear about that. Okay. Um, okay, so let me press stop here for now. So stay tuned for our next exciting dialogue, and together we'll change the world.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. If we yell loud enough, that's
Yeah.
my goal. If I yell loud enough, everyone has to listen.
Right, let's hear from Barbie. Barbie versus Oppenheimer. Barbie,
Right.
oh,
Yeah,
what a
basically, yeah.
juxtaposition that was. I saw one day and the other the next, but that's
Oh,
kind of where we are in the world, right?
yeah, yeah, pretty
Good
much.
for women. Woo-hoo.
We'll get there. I think we're
We'll
getting
get
there. We're
there.
closer
Yeah.
than we've ever been, I think.
Yes, we know how to get along. We know how to cooperate. It's like there, you can accomplish so much more with love and connection and lifting one another up. And I wish we had some of that mentality in Silicon Valley, because even though you have the right shiny surface in Silicon Valley, it's
Yes.
like, kill or be killed world within. It's
Yeah.
that Jekyll and Hyde kind of, oh, here we are in another topic. Well, you can see we got plenty to talk about.